The Australian dream. Owning your own home on a quarter of an acre block, perhaps with a pool. Grass for the kids to play. A patio for entertaining, a garden, and even a veggie patch. It's what most Australians want, but increasingly can't have.
I feel like the market is continually getting out of my reach.
The housing affordability crisis is actually a crisis of our own making in Australia.
For a start, the average block is now a ninth of an acre. No backyard, and prices have been expanding faster than block sizes have been shrinking. The typical Australian dream property is now all but out of reach for all but the well-off.
Clearly there has been policy settings put in to the Australian economy that didn't have the objective or the aim of keeping housing affordable in the Australian context.
If you touch house prices, if you introduce any kind of policy that could make house prices fall, you will lose any election.
Well, I think the Reserve Bank should worry. I think the prudential regulators should worry. I think the government should worry. I think all policymakers should worry.
Australia's 10.7 million homes are now worth $9.3 trillion, or an average of $869,000 each. That's up $1 trillion in just 5 months. In Sydney, the median price is over $1 million. Now, this is not an investment boom. It was driven by owner-occupiers desperate to get into the market, gripped by a fear of missing out.
I do like how they've got the bedrooms separated from the living areas.
Good size bedrooms as well. My name's Courtney Tame. I'm a first home buyer looking to buy my first house.
What do you think you're prepared to spend on this one?
Well, I think it's probably squeezing me, but probably $620,000.
It would likely be going over our budget on this particular home, so we might have to keep looking.
I do feel people are really at their limit and borrowing up to their limit to get into the market. They are, in some circumstances, having to go back to their bank or their mortgage broker and see if they can get a little bit of a bigger budget to be able to afford the home that they are really wanting to buy.
So the last 18 months have felt like a massive roller coaster of emotions. Hello.
Hello.
I work for a business that manufactures aeroplane parts. So during COVID, we obviously lost a lot of our work due to everybody not flying. Me and my son live with my parents, so we just want to get our own place and settle down, I guess, and it's hard. I've been saving. I'm desperate to get into the market. Just want something for me and my son to call our own. It's only me. I've got to provide for my child. It's every day is a struggle. Trying to save, make sure there's food on the table, pay the rent, all of that stuff is very difficult.
It's a lovely home. What's it worth? You tell me. At every bid now, buyers. Where do we start? At every bid, I'm in your hands. At 490 the bid to the left.
585.
90's the bid.
595.
610 good bid. Straight back.
616.
620 good bid.
621.
25. That's 625 now against you, madam. That against everyone else. That's 625. That's 635,000 now. Madam, you're out. I do thank you for your bidding. We are selling! We are selling! Madam, congratulations. Sold!
So that was disappointing, wasn't it?
Very disappointing. The property ended up going for $635,000. I was maxed out at $620,000. I feel pretty gutted. I feel a little bit shattered that it's gone over. Not surprised though. I think I will have to compromise on size, most probably location. I suppose, smaller unit, townhouse. Not what I was hoping for.
It's quite disappointing for buyers and certainly for Courtney to have that happen. So we were told about an off-market property this morning, so we're going to have a look at that.
There have been 3 distinct housing booms over the past 20 years. 2001 to 2008, 2012 to 2017, and in the past 12 months, there's been the pandemic boom, the steepest, most frantic we've ever seen. Now, the booms were punctuated by 2 long periods of flat prices, which included some shallow declines, and those happened after the GFC and after the interest rate hikes of 2010 to 2012. Now, over those 2 decades, the national median house price rose 364%. At the same time, the average wages increased 130% and the consumer price index 80%. In other words, house prices have increased nearly 3 times as much as wages and 4 times as much as other prices. And the big question is why? And is government policy over decades to blame?
We have no plan for housing in Australia. We don't deal with housing as a system. We respond in kind of piecemeal ways. The government response to COVID was to bring in interventions like Home Builder. And what Home Builder's done is really bring forward a whole lot of demand into the market that wasn't there before.
So you think this boom may be partly caused by the government's Home Builder scheme?
Oh, almost certainly. This boom is caused by interventions like the Home Builder scheme.
Well, the property market has been going up as a function of historically low interest rates, a strong and stable labour market, and the fact that people are wanting to get into the market and use the various government support programs like Home Builder and other state support programs that have made that first purchase that much easier.
Politicians, of course, shed crocodile tears about it's so sad that house prices are so expensive, and we'll give you $10,000 of first home buyers grants, which drive house prices up because everybody has more money. It's a silly game where people pretend that they care.
That silly game has been going on since 1966, when the original first home buyers scheme was introduced by the Menzies government. Before that, policy was focused on increased supply. After that, it switched to boosting demand. And there's now yet another federal parliamentary inquiry into housing affordability, run by Liberal MP Jason Falinski. But there's a problem with it. Well, Jason Falinski, every paragraph of your terms of reference refers to supply of housing. Are you even capable of putting into your report, making any other conclusion that the problem with housing affordability in Australia is supply, which happens to be a state and local government problem, not Commonwealth?
This inquiry, I can tell you already, recognises that this is a multifactorial problem, and the solution is going to be a lot of different things over a period of time.
So you told Four Corners that first home buyer schemes have pushed up prices, and the beneficiaries of that have been the sellers, not the buyers, even though they're aimed at buyers. Are you going to put that in your report?
Well, I can't, as you appreciate, preempt what the report's going to have in it, but I'd be very surprised if there isn't a paragraph or 2 or even a recommendation that around the impacts of stimulating demand, whether it be for a particular group of people or not, that has on house prices overall.
I'm Matt. Very good to meet you. Hey buddy, I'm Matt. We're going to be your new annoying neighbours. Yeah, we've just moved up from Botany.
It was great to meet you.
Good to meet you. I'm Matt Overs, this is my partner Sam, and we've just bought our first property here in Mascot, Sydney.
It's a 4-bedroom, 2-bathroom home, really great backyard. It's got a pool, which is awesome.
We purchased this property for $1.75 million. And we have a $1.4 million loan.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a big chunk of change. Like pretty much anyone else who is 30, we went to the bank of mum and dad. When we were looking to purchase, we knew that this was the height of a boom and we're at all-time property highs, but we had the conversation over and over that every year is the worst year to buy in Sydney. Yeah, just park it there.
We just kind of had the mentality of we wanted to get in as soon as possible.
We are seeing quite a few first home buyers who are taking out large mortgages. Anecdotally, I think some of it is to do with the fact that they haven't been spending a lot of money over that last 12 months, so they've been able to increase how much they can put aside, but also the old bank of mum and dad. We do find that people are being helped out to have an increased deposit.
4 bags.
Awesome, thank you.
That's a lot more bags.
Yeah.
Of course. Oh, outdoor furniture, where do we want to put that? In terms of the possibility of rising interest rates, which is inevitable really, we really did a lot of calculations and made sure that we weren't overextending ourselves in terms of the weekly repayments. And even if a correction does happen in the next year, 2 years, 5 years, whenever that might be, we are certainly planning on living here for a much longer time.
I'm not worried about a correction in the market at all. I look at the Sydney property market the same as London, New York, Paris, Tokyo. It just seems to have entered its own little stratosphere where it just maybe won't perpetually go up, but I don't think that it's ever going to go down a huge percentage.
But look at this 6-bedroom, 5-bathroom mansion in Jersey City. It's about the same distance from downtown Manhattan as Matt and Sam's mascot home is from Sydney's CBD, but it's sold for $100,000 less. Record low interest rates are helping buyers like Matt and Sam borrow and therefore bid more money to afford multi-million-dollar homes. It's a major factor fueling property price growth. For his part, the man who oversaw the first of the 3 housing booms as Treasurer blames the Reserve Bank for the current one.
The Reserve Bank got it wrong.
In what way?
It said that it could hold the 3-year rate at 0.1% out to 2024, right? It couldn't. It was an irresponsible statement to make. I suppose they were saying to people, look, try and get a fixed mortgage because we can hold the rates out to 2024. They now admit they can't. And in fact, it would be irresponsible of them to try if inflation took off. I mean, the Reserve Bank can't give you cast iron guidance for 3 years. And you'd be foolish to take it.
RBA Governor Philip Lowe declined an interview, but in a rare press conference earlier this month, he said lifting interest rates to curb housing prices wasn't in the central bank's remit.
That is not on our radar screen. It's not something we're contemplating. I don't think it would be appropriate. If the society is concerned about rising housing prices, I don't think the solution is higher interest rates.
And it's not the nation's banking regulator, the Australian Prudential Regulation Authority's responsibility either.
APRA doesn't care about affordability in the housing market. The only thing you're worried about is whether the increase in the cost of housing directly or indirectly threatens the stability of the financial system in Australia.
I wouldn't go so far as to saying we don't care, but it is not in our mandate.
Adding to the pile of causal factors is tax settings. The New South Wales government has now rocked the boat with its own submission to the parliamentary inquiry. Now, while it agrees a lack of supply and low interest rates are factors that have contributed to soaring house prices, it also places blame on tax breaks. And it's now calling for the federal government to review the 50% capital gains tax discount, which provides a major tax break for those selling properties they've owned for 12 months or more. So it's the Liberal government blaming you?
I don't think so. As I said before, Australia's got one of the higher capital gains tax rates in the world. No comparable country, Britain, America, taxes capital at the same rate as income. And it'd be a mistake in Australia if we tried to do the same thing. It would be bad for the overall economy. When was housing affordability at its peak in Australia and house ownership at its peak?
About 1966.
What was the capital gains tax rate then? 0. The capital gains tax didn't come in until 1985. So, this idea that somehow house prices went up because of the capital gains tax discount just flies in the face of all evidence.
Australia is the world's 5th biggest country at 7.7 million square kilometres, but half of us crowd into 2 cities, and that's another piece of the housing affordability jigsaw.
There's no other country on earth where the population is so very concentrated.
Governments have often talked about decentralisation over the years, and there have been lots of decentralisation plans to kind of do something about this concentration, but they've never really worked. Why not?
In order to drive centralisation, you need to improve infrastructure. You need to make sure that the individual cities are connected with really good roads, with high-speed rail networks. Australia is one of the richest countries on earth as measured per GDP per capita, and we are not building an infrastructure that is reflected of this wealth. And that's silly. The idea would be if government was to build highly modern, super fast rail infrastructure, population growth along those lines would follow. The problem here is the political will.
And now, suddenly, decentralisation is happening of its own accord because the working from home revelation caused by COVID-19 is allowing people to move away from the city into cheaper housing, which, as a side effect, is pushing up regional prices.
So all of a sudden, people are freer to choose where they want to live. So maybe the decentralization is actually a bottom-up experiment.
We know that the losers from the housing affordability crisis are millennials and Generation Zers trying to get into the market, and the winners are clearly the baby boomers. And they have political clout because there's more of them.
When you break down the housing market, not everybody's interest is the same.
There's 11 million voters who own a house and 100,000 voters trying to buy one.
If you own a house and you're established in a house, you don't want a lower price for your house. Nobody wants to go to an auction and sell their house and get a lower price. So you are right that there are many incentives for governments to keep the prices high, just as there are incentives for established homeowners to keep the prices high. And that's why I talk about the fact that this is particularly a first home buyer's problem.
It's funny, as soon as you realise you're owning a home, all of a sudden you're not hoping for property prices to crash. You're looking the other way.
It's a tough spot to be in for the government MP tasked with trying to find a solution. Jason Falinski has said having some of the least affordable housing in the world is akin to intergenerational theft. Do you think that there's an element here of baby boomers deliberately robbing younger generations?
No, I think where there is, I do think that there has been active consideration by different levels of government and different professions that have determined that they had an opportunity to lower the cost of housing, but instead were disinclined to do this or disincentivised to do it because it benefited them to have higher prices in housing.
Well, that's quite a big statement.
Well, hopefully I'm proved wrong.
So what happens next? Well, this pandemic boom happened despite there being little to no immigration to Australia. But the borders are opening now and there's a worker shortage to fill.
And I suspect the fact that most of the people coming in are probably going to be slightly higher income than we would normally get. There's going to be more problems with affordability than we're expecting. There's been so many inquiries into housing affordability in my research career, and they never really come up with very much. And I think that it's time for a national conversation about the type of housing system that we actually want.
At the very least, we need an end to band-aids like home builder and first home buyer schemes. And above all, someone needs to take responsibility for housing affordability. There are 9 ministers for housing in this country. What are they all doing?
Hi, I'm Lee Sales. Thanks for watching this story. If you'd like to watch more of 730's stories, they are on the left of your screen. And tap on the button below to subscribe and get the latest from ABC News.